sharing. Oh, there you go. Okay, now it's live. Very cool. Okay, so now anything that we do now will be live and recorded on the YouTube channel. On whatever account you used to invite the Hangout, all the recording will be available right after the session, which is pretty cool. Then you can share with your members if they want to learn about WildFly later.
Okay.
All right, so let me share my slides then. All right, can you see my slides now?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll get started then. So yeah, my name is Arun Gupta and I work for Red Hat, and today we'll talk about what's new in WildFly 8.
Oh, right now we don't see.
So do you see the slides or not?
Yep. No. Yeah. No.
All right, can you see my slides now?
No.
Okay, so let me see. I thought I shared. So yeah, my name is Arun Gupta and I work for Red Hat, and today we'll talk about what's new in WildFly 8.
Sorry, I don't know what is going on because it seems that the screen is. No, we can't see anything right now.
Okay, let me try to share the screen again.
No. Yeah.
And I see the echo as well. Can you see the slides now?
No. Again. Oh, there's a problem with the sound and. Sorry, I don't know what is going on because it seems that the screen is. No, we can't see anything right now.
Okay, let me try to share the screen again. Yeah, I think somebody has the YouTube of the Hangout running in the background, and that's where the echo is coming from. So you may want to close the tab which has the YouTube running.
No. Again. Oh, there's a problem with the sound.
How are we looking now? I can see my slides in your in your room though. Can you see the slides now? Hello? Looking now.
Hello, Arun. Did you see right now our screen?
Well, I see the room right now, which is okay. But what's important is, do you see the slides? Can you see the slides now?
Sí.
Hello?
Wait a moment.
Can you wait a moment, Arun? We are trying to figure out what's going on.
Okay.
Now, did you listen better for while we are talking? Maybe you think there's a problem with the echo or something like this.
Yeah, I think it's an echo because whatever I say here goes on the YouTube streaming in about 30 seconds or so. So there's a few seconds delay over there.
Okay. And yeah, there's mute or
No, I would say in your browser, pick a tab which is also running the Hangout, because there might be an echo coming from that instead.
I think right now we can continue. I think right now everything is okay, I think. Can you see? Can you show for us your slides, for example?
That's what I'm showing right now.
Yeah, we can see right now, but
Okay.
I don't know why. Because we're gonna speak in the Hangout. Okay, then I will try to mute when you want, and then we try to when you show the presentation, we try to mute if you want.
Okay. So should I start the presentation then? All right. That's a good indication for me. All right, I'll start. And yeah, if you have any questions, any comments, or any concerns, feel free to ping me on the Hangout. All right. So my name is Arun Gupta. I work for Red Hat, and today I'll talk about the new features in WildFly. So I am the director for developer advocacy at Red Hat. Developer advocacy really means talking to developers, reaching out to developers, understanding what they need, giving them what they need, bringing feedback from them into the company and vice versa. Share the latest and greatest technology from within the company outside to the developers. So I try it out myself and then I share with the rest of the developers. I've written a few books for O'Reilly and McGraw-Hill, and I love exchanging fitness routines. So if you have any specific fitness routine, I'm always looking for suggestions on that. Zero Turnaround is a company that does this annual reports on the landscape of Java. And a couple of years back, they did last year actually, literally, they did a report on Java application servers. They talked about Tomcat, JBoss, Glassfish, Cherry, Liberty Profile, and different application servers. Each of the application server was given a metric, or each of the application server was evaluated in different categories, like how easy it is to install, how easy it is to take into production, how rapid the deployment times are, how good is the IDE integration. Now, taking those into consideration, they gave each app server a number, like in all of these different categories, from 0 to 5. And overall, when they calculated the score, JBoss actually wins. So JBoss is what is the old name for WildFly, and I'll talk about that name in a second. So what they said is, if we had to pick a winner, it would be JBoss, because that is the only application server whose score never dropped below 4. What they also said is JBoss consistently performed very well in each category. It's very, very friendly to developers. Okay. Now, if I show you the survey results from previous years from Zero Turnaround, I believe this is 2010. So you can see the share of JBoss in the entire pie. So Tomcat, of course, is the biggest pie over there, but JBoss is the most significant one over here with 174. If you look at 2011, then again, JBoss is the biggest open source server that is commercially supported. Then 12, again, similar results. JBoss continues to be the dominant player. I think this is 12. The previous one was 11. So 12 again, 28%. The number kind of stays pretty much at the top level. The highest the biggest open source application server, which is commercially supported. 13, again, similar results. And this is the results from 2014. So JBoss continues to be the dominant application server that is commercially supported. Now, Jetty and Glassfish are there. Jetty, it is commercially supported, but it's a servlet container. That's about it. And Glassfish is no longer commercially supported. So let's talk about WildFly for a second. So now, what is WildFly? Then it's a new and improved name for JBoss application server. And today we'll understand the new features of WildFly 8 and see how some of the features are carried forward from AS7. So what is WildFly 8? Now, if any of you have been using JBoss application server, 3, 4, 5, 6, any versions of that, the way they work is there is a community version, which is where the features are added first, and that community version is converted into a commercial application server. Now, at Red Hat, anything that is cool, that has a cool name, is a community project, and anything which is Red Hat, JBoss, blah blah, is a commercial product. So cool name, project; boring name, product. That's sort of the classification. And that's what was missing for JBoss application server. So WildFly is now the upstream for Red Hat JBoss Enterprise Application Platform, which is a commercially supported version of WildFly. It's extremely fast, starts up rapidly, very lightweight in disk and memory footprint, and manageable in multiple ways. We'll talk about each of these points throughout the presentation today. Extremely developer friendly. There are different ways by which we allow WildFly to be integrated in different IDEs, what kind of applications you can develop on WildFly. So it's extremely developer friendly. It supports the latest Java EE standards. So while Java EE is the biggest source of developers that come to WildFly, but it does support other frameworks as well. We'll talk about that briefly. And of course, it's fully open source. That means that if your application gets stuck somewhere, you can attach the application server source code to the application, debug all the way into the application server, and figure out what the problem is. And what's interesting is you can even apply a patch. You can provide a patch and then send a pull request for it, because the entire source code is on GitHub. All right, so let's take a look at what are the WildFly 8 main features. So, but before that, it's important to understand WildFly is the community project, JBoss is the commercial product. All the source code from WildFly, it's not a new source code at all. It's just inherited from JBoss AS7. So all the good features, and then adding a lot more new features over there. There are some updates, and I'll talk about them as we move along. So WildFly 8 main features, Java EE7, of course, it's a Java EE7 compliant application server. So all the technologies from Java EE7 are supported here, and I'll talk about a few of them today. It's got a brand new high-performance web server called as Undertow. This is a brand new server replacing JBoss Web. We'll talk about that. The port usage, in JBoss AS7 was quite high in the sense that there was one port for Corba, one for RMI IOP, one for EJB, one for JMS, and so on. Now these ports are cut down to just 2. So then, and how we accomplish that, we'll talk about that. We also added support for role-based administration control and audit logging. We'll talk about that too. Also added support for automated patching, how subsequent releases can be patches instead of full-blown downloads. We'll talk about that. Also provide a minimalistic code distribution. So instead of downloading full-blown WildFly, you can download a code distribution which is about 15 megabytes and build your own framework on it. All right, so let's talk about it now. So as I said, Java EE7 compliance is the biggest feature of WildFly. What I call this is the pancake diagram of Java EE7. So you can see there are 4 new technologies that are added to Java EE7. They're highlighted in the blue color. So JSON, WebSocket, concurrency, and batch. Those are the 4 brand new technologies that are shared over here. Let's talk about it. What is it that comes in these technologies? There are some technologies that are also updated, such as jaxrs, or CDI, or bean validation, or JMS, and we'll talk about some of those as well. Okay. So let me take a quick pause here and go to the room and ask if there are any questions. Is the pace okay? Is the explanation okay? Just do a thumbs up so that I know I can see it. Okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah. And feel free to keep it interactive. If you have any questions, any point of time, Ask on a chat. I'll take a break, answer those questions, or you can ask any point of time. Very cool. That's good to know. All right. So Java E7 WebSocket. That, in my opinion, is the most changing technology added to Java E7. This is the most important technology. So WebSockets provide a full duplex bidirectional communication channel over a single TCP. Unlike HTTP, which is client to server, and each new HTTP connection requires a new TCP connection, Java E7 WebSocket is a lot simpler. You take a TCP connection or HTTP connection, you upgrade it to WebSocket, and over the same TCP connection, the client and server can talk to each other as many times. And once that connection is set up, the client and servers are true peers. So I won't dig into the details of WebSocket here, but that's sort of the essence of WebSocket. So anything client sending a message to server or server sending a message to client can be easily accomplished using WebSocket. Okay. Now, JSR 356 is the JSR or Java specification request by which this technology is integrated into the Java E7 platform. What the slide shows you is a simple piece of code on how you can take a POJO and convert it into a canonical chat server. So I got my public class chat endpoint here. In the chat endpoint, I added the annotation called as @server endpoint. And this is the URI at which the endpoint is listening for a WebSocket message. When a WebSocket message is received, you annotate a method by @onMessage saying, oh, call this business method whenever a WebSocket message is received. Now, WebSockets can send text or binary data. A text data is indicated by string parameter. So if you have a string parameter, that's exactly where your string payload is made available. And then session is an encapsulation of conversation between the client and the server. So now if you look at the implementation of the method here, all we're doing is from the session, we're getting all the open sessions on this server. So think about it, multiple clients may be connecting to this server. And in the process of doing so, you will have all the open sessions that are maintained on the server. So you're saying from the server, give me all the open sessions. You're saying, give me the remote client that is connected over here, and you send the message back. So what happens is a client sends a message, the server receives the message over here in this onMessage method, or the method that is mandated with onMessage, and then it iterates over all the open sessions and broadcasts the message to all the clients. So literally in this 10 lines, you can write a canonical chat server that works out of the box. Just a simple class, no deployment descriptor, no additional files required, makes you the canonical chat server very easily. Java E7 also added support for batch application, which is JSR 352. Batch JSR defines the support for how you can do an item-oriented processing very easily. And by that I mean, think about the use case where you receive a CSV file at the end of the day. In that CSV file, you may want to process each line of the file, validate it, saying, okay, the record makes sense, and then maybe store it into the database. So there are 3 different steps essentially that you're doing. You're reading the CSV file, then you're processing / validating it, and then eventually writing it to the database. And the item being a line of the CSV file. So what you have is your item count here, saying, okay, I want to read 3 lines at a time, process it, and write it. Well, item count is really for the writer, as a matter of fact, not for the reader. You read one item at one line at a time, then you validate that line, and then you say, I don't want to do a write for every read. So I'm going to read, process, and aggregate on the writer, and I want to aggregate 3 items. And then when I'm ready, then I will write those 3 items together. So essentially what you're doing is you're defining your job as a job specification language, which in this case is called as job XML because it's defined using XML language. So in this job, you're saying I got a single step, This single step is of the type chunk. Chunk is basically my item-oriented processing. And the item-oriented processing is saying, I got my reader, processor, and writer identified. And each of the item count, which is how many items I want to process at a given point of time, is 3. Another advantage of using this chunk style processing is that each chunk, so let's say you have 1,000 records and your chunk or item count is 10. So every time each chunk is effectively run within a container managed transaction. So what that means is that if you are processing 1,000 records, you are actually processing 10 records at a time. And each of those 10 records are processed as an atomic transaction. So you read, process, aggregate, read, process, aggregate. You do that 10 times, and then you write it out for 10 records. And then you go to the next 10 records, and then you go to the next 10 records. And for some reason, if it doesn't succeed, it falls back. The job is reported as failure or stopped, and then you can restart the job. The job automatically starts from the last checkpoint that was done for the job. So a lot of inherent advantages of using batch processing. So you no longer have to use Spring Batch, and you actually find this very similar because a lot of this work actually was derived from Spring Batch. JSON processing, which is JSR 353, provides a low-level API on how you can easily create or generate and process a JSON structure. So here I'm showing you a object model API. So you can create a JSON using object builder. Then you can add, well, if you think about JSON, it's a name value pair. So you can add a name and a value, add another name banana, another value yellow, and then you say build the JSON object. So you built your JSON object here, and then you can take this JSON object and write it out to a writer. So in this case, you say a string writer. Okay, so you say JSON create writer, and you write the object. Well, you can of course write it to a stream as well. So this is an object model API. In addition, JSON API also defines streaming API, which is more event-based, more like a stacks API. Now, Java EE 8 is already in the process of defining how JSON B, which is more like JAX-B, JSR would look like. So there's a draft proposal already available. So I would recommend taking a look at that. Java E7 concurrency utilities is a JSR 236, is again a brand new addition to the Java E7 platform. Java EE is a managed environment. So in that managed environment, it's not recommended and even allowed to run user threads. Because if you run user threads, then who's going to manage it? User, right? But that's not the idea. It's managed by the container. So now with concurrency utilities for Java EE, what you can do is you can say, I'm going to inject a managed executor service. So this executor service already exists in JDK. You're saying just inject a managed executor service instead. And to that managed executor service, you can submit a task. Say new my task. My task is just implementing runnable, and you got run here. This is where your business logic goes. So you inject a managed executor here, and then you submit the task. The advantage of using container managed threads is that now your class loading, security, JNDI context, all of that is available in this user thread managed by the container, which is not possible otherwise. Okay. So those were the 5 or 4 new JSRs that were added to the Java E7 platform. A quick summary: WebSocket, Batch, JSON, and concurrency utilities. Now, jaxrs is an extremely successful JSR, but the first version of jaxrs was primarily focused on the server side. How you can click on a server, or how you can take a server, how you can take a POJO, publish it as a REST endpoint on a server. So jaxrs 2.0, which is JSR 339, added support for client API. So here you can see I can take a client builder, which is sort of my entry point to the jaxrs client API, create a new client, set up a new target to it, say, okay, this is the URI where my REST resource is published. Then on that target, you can set up a sub resource. So if you want to have another resource on it, then you resolve the templates, of course, saying ID is value is 1. You can specify the media type of on the wire exchange that needs to happen. And then eventually you're saying, okay, give me the person. So you specify the genericized type and you get the response back. You can see the API is pretty fluent, builder style API. You just build upon it and then you get the response back. Of course, there are ways by which you can break the API, do more dynamic invocation, and there are a lot more other features in jaxrs as well. This is implemented using REST Easy in WildFly. Okay. JMS 2.0 is JSR 343. Now, JMS was revised over 10 years ago, so the main goal for JMS 2.0 was literally catch up with the platform, and that's what it did effectively. So here, for example, you can see a new annotation is being defined called as JMS destination definition. Now, the idea is if you specify this annotation in a WAR file, then you can say, here's my name, here is my interface, I want to create this queue automatically. So instead of providing a deployment script, or instead of providing a deployment script, now you can say, look at the WAR file is the deployment script. That makes your deployment a lot more easier. Not only JMS destination definition, a step before that, which is creating a connection factory, can be created as well. So there are annotations to declare connection factories as part of a Java E7 application. Now, of course, once you have factories and destinations created, then you can inject the resource, in this case a queue. JMS context is the entry point to the JMS2 simplified API. So you inject the JMS context, and notice I'm commenting out the connection factory here. That is because if you don't specify the connection factory, there's a default connection factory that can be injected. Now, this is where the line number 4 is where most of the fun happens. So on the context, you create a producer, you send the message to this destination using this payload. So you can understand, if you have been programming in JMS 1.1, how much of boilerplate code has been cut down by JMS 2.0. And the API is really clean. There are no more checked exceptions. There are mostly runtime exceptions. So literally, this code would have required, all this code here on this slide would have required a deployment script in an application server specific way, lots of checked exception, lots of boilerplate code. All of that is now gone, basically. JSR 907 is Java Transaction API 1.2. Again, some cool improvements made over there. So up until now, if you want container managed transactions, those can only be accomplished in an EJB. You can do user managed transactions, but those are mostly done in servlet or even in an EJB if you want to do it. But those are user managed transactions. So now, if you want container managed transaction in a POJO, you can literally put the annotation called as add transactional on any managed bean. So take a POJO, put an add transactional annotation in there. The Java E7 runtime requires automatically to start a transaction and commit or roll back the transaction based upon the output. So in addition, it also defines transaction scope, which is a new CDI scope, which ties the lifecycle of a bean to the currently active JTA transaction. So that means if there is no JTA transaction active, this bean will not be activated, or this bean will not be available for injection. CDI 1.1, several improvements made to CDI 1.1 as well. First of all, CDI was a game changer in Java E6. So, but the biggest source of problem for CDI 1.0 was that, my bean injection is not working. And the most usual error for that, the most usual cause for that was people were not adding beans.xml in their archive. because that was required to enable injection. So now in Java EE 7, the beans with a CDI scope are automatically enabled. That means there is no need to add beans.xml. It's really optional. You can still add it, and you can specify some more attributes to control how bean injection works. So for example, you can say my bean discovery mode is all, in which case it will make all the beans available for injection. Of course, you can say annotated, which is the default mode anyway, or you can just turn off dependency injection completely by specifying none. Okay? So there's some goodness in CDI other than default enablement as well. There is also a priority that has been defined for interceptors and decorators. So you can globally order them. You can globally define the order in which they need to be invoked. Now, Java EE 7 is very well supported in NetBeans, IDE, JBoss Tools, which is a bunch of Eclipse plugins, plus Eclipse prepackaged bundle, or JBoss Developer Studio, and IntelliJ IDEA. So it's very well supported in all three IDEs, and of course, WildFly works in all three IDEs. So in that sense, those are the three primary IDEs. So if you are using any of those, then Java EE 7 and WildFly is available to you. Okay, I'm going to take another quick break and switch to my room. Any questions so far?
Hi, Arun. I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think I have the mic here, but nobody ask anything, so I think it's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So now in WildFly, we have added a brand new web server as well. It's called as Undertow. In earlier versions of JBoss AS7, we used to have JBoss Web, but that was primarily based on Tomcat, and we added our own bug fixes and features around it. But then web server is such a critical piece of your application server, we decided to write it from scratch to get all the flexibility and the performance benefits that we'll see otherwise. So Undertow is a brand new web server, provides both blocking and non-blocking features based upon NIO APIs. It's a very pluggable kind of composition-based architecture. So you have different handlers which provide different functionalities, and those can be integrated. Very lightweight and fully embeddable, and this will become clear when I show the next slide. In the sense that Undertow is effectively a class. You can just create a new instance and then manage it that way. It of course supports Servlet 3.1 and HTTP upgrade. Servlet 3.1 is the Java EE 7 requirement, and HTTP upgrade is so much of a requirement for WebSocket as well. So both of those are supported by Undertow. It also provides support for mod cluster, which is how we prefer to do clustering configuration or load balancing in WildFly. So let's take a look at Undertow code. So here I'm building an Undertow instance. I'm adding a listener on this host and this port. Then I'm setting a new handler, saying new HTTP handler. And in this HTTP handler, I'm just overriding the method called as handle request. And anytime you make a request, this is the method that is going to be called. And here I'm saying get response headers. I'm going to put content type as text plain, and I'm going to send the message body as hello world. Okay. And then at the end, I'm saying build and start the server. So if you think about it, this is literally just one line of source code. Okay. Now this one line of source code simplifies the entire. If you put this one line of source code anywhere in your Java code, this will spin up an Undertow instance for you and set up a HTTP server. So really cool and really simple. TechEmpower is a company that does benchmark on a whole lot of frameworks, and they use the term framework very loosely. But even then, if you look at it, when they did this survey, when they did the framework, when they did the benchmark on Undertow. It was a beefy server, very lot of memory and processing power. But with that server, they were able to do 31 million concurrent connections in 30 seconds, about 30 seconds. Okay, so the point being, Undertow is very highly performant out of the box, no configuration required. And remember, this is about 1 million concurrent connections per second, 1 billion requests per second. And this is without any HTTP pipelining or anything of that sort. If you start incorporating those, then this number would definitely go much higher. WildFly, well, in JBoss AS7, we were having multiple ports that need to be upgraded, that were required. As I said, one for JMS, one for EJB, one for RMIOP, Corba, so on. Even for management, there were multiple ports. But now, using HTTP upgrade, which is a standard terminology in HTTP language, we only expose 2 ports. One is 8080 for applications, and another one is 9990 for management. So what happens is, anytime a request comes in for JMS, the first request is an initial HTTP upgrade request response. Says, okay, I'm making a request to JMS on port 8080. Then the WildFly application server looks at the headers and then accordingly upgrade the request to do JMS talking. So there's no longer HTTP, it's a JMS request and response after that. So yes, there is a initial overhead of the HTTP upgrade request response, but this does allow you to use just 2 ports. And this is very important, specifically in a high density environment where you don't want to open, or you don't need rather, that many ports to be open in the firewall, because you will have to poke that many holes in the firewall in that case. So think about OpenShift use case. If you want to deploy WildFly in there, then you will have to poke that many holes in the firewall by default. WildFly also adds support for role-based access control. If you guys are using JBoss AS7 or any previous versions or JBoss EAP, then you will see that if you log into the web-based admin console, once you have logged in, then you have access to the entire admin console. There is no such concept of saying, I am a junior developer, or I am only a monitor, so I should not be allowed, or you should not be allowed to deploy an application or change a configuration. That's what this support is basically. So in WildFly, we have predefined administrative and privileged roles. These roles are defined here, for example. So monitor, operator, maintainer, so on. Each role is effectively a set of permissions. And the permissions basically specify what actions can be taken on each resource. Resource is like a JDBC resource, or a JMS resource, or a WAR file, or a log file, so on. You can define certain groups that belong to a role, or even a certain specific user that belong to a role. In addition, WildFly also provides support for administrative audit logging. So what you can do is you can start logging your connection and authentication events. You can even start logging your management operations. Currently, these logs are generated as JSON records. So, and we also have a couple of audit logging handlers. So you can say log these messages to a local file, or you can say even log to syslog using SSH. So that's pretty cool. WildFly also has support for automated patching. And what that means is that we added the support in WildFly 8, and now when WildFly 8.1 was released, at that point of time, there were 2 bundles released. One was a full WildFly 8.1 install. So you can say, you know what, I don't care about patching. I want to do a brand new install of 8.1. So you download the full bundle. And the other option is you can say, oh, you know what, I got in 8.0, I already have some applications, configurations, etc. being deployed. I don't want to change that. How about I just update my 8.0 to 8.1, and that's what the patching would give you. So effectively, it allows your binaries and configuration installation. So when you download the patch, it's basically a zip bundle with updates and metadata. You can apply that patch to an existing bundle. So for example, you can take 8.0, apply the 8.1 patch, and it will become 8.1. And there are a couple of ways you can do that. There is an online patching or there's an offline patching. So modes in which the server is running and you apply the patch, or the server is not running and then apply the patch. There are more details on my blog on this particular topic if you're interested, but I think it's a pretty cool mechanism. And of course, rollbacks are possible. Say if you applied a patch and for some reason it caused inconsistency, you can always roll back. We talked briefly about WildFly minimalistic code distribution. Now, this is a 15 megabyte download, which really allows you to download the core, the very much core of WildFly. So for example, the rich management layer that we have, the fully concurrent service class loader that we have, or modular class loading that we have, the deployment layer that we have. So all of these functionalities are packaged together as a core. Now, it has the hot deployment layer, but it doesn't know how to deploy a WAR file. It has the layer, but it doesn't allow you to manage a WAR file or an application. It has a concurrent class loader, but none of the modules are bundled with it. So the idea is you have all the capabilities and the functionality available to you, and then you can build your own framework on it. So for example, you can take the WildFly core and build your own WildFly on top of it, based upon what your requirement is, or a completely new framework which is not even related to Java EE or WAR file or WildFly at all. Now, WildFly definitely has improved JDK 8 capability or compatibility. Thousands of tests from WildFly are run using JDK 8. It also bundles the REST-EZ 3, which is what provides jaxrs 2.0 compliant implementations. But in addition, REST-EZ also provides lots of other cool features too. Hibernate Search was a module that a lot of people were using out of the box. I mean, after downloading JBoss, now it's bundled as part of WildFly. We also provide per deployment security permissions, which is a slightly simpler way of doing security in JBoss and Java EE. There is a new clustering API, which is a Java-based API. So using this clustering API, you can say, I want to listen for CDI events when a cluster goes down or server group goes down or an application is deployed. And then you can create your custom dashboard using that clustering API. Not everything is added. Container managed persistence, jaxrpc, and JSR 88, which was for management of Java EE application. Those are deprecated from the platform or pruned from the platform, and hence are removed from WildFly as well. Now, if you want to do WildFly in the cloud, so OpenShift, of course, provides a first-class experience for WildFly in the cloud. In addition, CloudBees also does that offering. So if I were to take you to OpenShift is Red Hat's open source cloud platform. It provides public cloud, which is online, or private cloud, which is enterprise, or a hybrid cloud, which can be created the way you want it. And origin is where all the work is done. So now if I log in here, okay, I can create a new application here. And you can see there are a bunch of applications that can be, the way OpenShift works is it has a cartridge-based architecture. So you've got a lot of cartridges. Each cartridge provides a certain functionality. So here you can do JBoss AS7, Tomcat, Tomcat 7. I'm interested in a WildFly cartridge. So by default, you have the capability to install 3 cartridges or 3 applications and install multiple cartridges in it. and each, well, by default you get 3 gears in OpenShift, and each gear is half a gig memory and 1 gig of disk space. And WildFly happily runs in that. So, for example, if I go to WildFly here, you can say I want to create a new instance for WildFly. So just type Barcelona jug, and I say this is the gear what I was talking about. So small gear being half a gig of memory and 1 gig of RAM, and I click on create application, and that's it. Just that one click of button and typing the name, I automatically get, I am automatically deploying an instance of WildFly in the cloud. So that's pretty cool.
Arun, I have a question. How how we can use OpenShift? I mean, there's a kind of console when we can start or stop WildFly, or can you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, OpenShift and WildFly is a complete topic by itself. So here, for example, while it's creating my application, I can go back to my applications here. You can see there are several applications that are already deployed here. So if I look at, say, for example, I created a Java E7 hands-on lab, okay? This is deployed on WildFly application server 8.0 final. I can say, go to my lab here. This is how the Java E7 hands-on lab look like. So this is a real Java E7 application deployed on a WildFly instance on OpenShift here. So I can say, okay, I want to see some database interaction here. So it shows me the list of movies. I can do WebSockets. I can do JMS, all sorts of functionality. So the way it works is very simple. Once you create your application, well, first of all, it automatically creates a Git repository for you. So you can check out the source code. This is the source code URL for the Git. So you can say git clone and get this code out, or you can log into your application as well. So here it kind of shows you that I want to SSH access to my terminal in OpenShift. So you can say SSH to this account. So for example, if I copy this here, if I just do SSH here, okay? So there you go. Now I'm in my OpenShift instance, which is my 1 gig of disk space and half gig of memory here. So I can say, show me the contents here. You can take a look at your WildFly instance. So show me installed here. So you can start looking through this over here. So that's one way. Of course, there is JBoss Developer Studio. So if I fire up my JBoss Developer Studio here, now you have access to the console. You can access your application very easily. So here, for example, if I look at it, Java E7 Lab was my application name. Miles to go is my domain. rhcloud.com is a standard. Okay, that's how my name is defined. So here I can create, right in the JBoss Developer Studio, I can create a brand new OpenShift application. I'm going to save my password here. So I provide my OpenShift credentials. And by the way, OpenShift is completely free to try out. There are no time bombs. You get those 3 gears for free for life. So it's verifying my user credentials now. Okay, it shows my domain automatically. I can say I want to use an existing application. So here I can say I want to use a BCN Jug application that I just created. So this is going to be my page, BCN Jug miles to go, rhcloud.com. So if I go here now and look at applications, so if I look here, this application is already ready. Same source code, log into your application. You can enable Jenkins, add other cartridges to it, databases, whatever you want. So if I go here to my application, this is my main page. Again, it gives you a little bit of more detailed information over here. And I believe there is a snoop.jsp page. Yeah, it gives you a little bit more information about your memory monitor, cache, and some more JVM details for your WildFly application server running on OpenShift. So now in JBoss Developer Studio, I connected with the BCN Jug application. Okay, I can go to next, I can create a new project. So I can also set up a server for easy publishing. So I click on next. Okay, it's going to ask me for my location. So I'm going to specify it, say document. I specify it a directory and click on finish. It's going to establish the authenticity. So I'm not going to push any changes to OpenShift yet. So my entire application is now available here. So it's basically git checked out the entire, or git cloned the entire repo here. If I look at, say, source main web app, this is the index.html file that was shown over there. And the programming model is very cool because here in the JBoss Developer Studio, I can make any change. For example, in the application right here, I can make a change here. Okay. As soon as I do git commit push, the change goes and the application is automatically redeployed. And if I refresh the application here, the changes become live. So it's a very seamless, integrated development experience and deployment experience. That's the easiest way to start with WildFly on OpenShift. Then, if you want, you can of course download WildFly on your local server, local machine. It's not a big download. So if I go to say wildfly.org, for example, I can click on downloads, and here you go. It's my 8.10 final. This is the full distribution, and this is the patch bundle I was talking about earlier. So you can download these and then get started with them as well.
Cool. That's really cool. I mean, I was only looking for how we can manage, and then you explain a lot of information for us about how we can build an application on the cloud using WildFly and JBoss Studio. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Something that would be useful is in that case, well, I would just Google it. So here you go. Let's see this. WildFly open. What do I say? JBoss Developer. If I Google for it, there you go. So there's a blog that comes up, getting started with WildFly in OpenShift and JBoss Developer Studio. I recorded a short video on how this can be done. So you can say create an OpenShift cartridge. So if you don't know anything about OpenShift or WildFly, this video in about 13 minutes will help you create a complete Java E7 application using OpenShift and WildFly and JBoss Developer Studio.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now show of hands. How many of you are using JBoss AS7 already? No, just one hand. Okay, couple. All right, yeah. So maybe I'll give a quick introduction over here. I mean, I got a hard stop in about 7 minutes. So WildFly has a lot of code features that came from JBoss AS7. So you can run WildFly in standalone mode or managed domain mode as well. By standalone means it's a single instance of WildFly, and the managed domain mode means that there's a centralized administration that is available. So if I go here actually, yeah, standalone is a single independent instance. Managed domain means you can manage multiple instances from a single point of view. This is a better explanation. So now, if you look at managed domain mode, think of this as these 4 big red boxes as 4 hosts. So host 1, host 2, host 3, host 4. Okay. On each host, we are running something called as a host controller. So there's a host controller, host controller, host controller, and a host controller. On one of the machines, we promote the host controller to be a domain controller, which sort of is a central point for management and administration. Okay. Now, there is one domain controller and there are 3 host controllers. These host controllers are effectively responsible. Well, on each host, you could have multiple WildFly server instances running. Okay, so in this host we have 2 server instances running. On this host 3 we have 2 server instances running as well, and on host 4 just single server instance. So what you do is now you create your server group. So say, okay, I want my server group to span across host 2 and host 3. And then in this case, the host controller is responsible for life cycle of server 1 and 2. So for some reason, if server 1 comes down, it makes sure it brings it back again. Or if server 2 goes down, it brings it back again. Similarly, host controller on host 3 is responsible for life cycle of server 3 and 4. But now, when you deploy an application, you ask the domain controller that I want to deploy an application, and you target to a server group. And the server group is spanning host 2 and host 3, so it automatically deployed, so to say, a cluster of servers together. And that's the point of centralized administration, which is very cool. There are lots of different clustering strategies. You can use UDP for communication, can be configured for unicast TCP. Lots of different clusters that are available. Mod cluster is the preferred one, and you can see the advantages of using mod cluster. In addition, you can also use mod JK and mod proxy. ISAPI or NSAPI connectors are available too. I won't dig into the details for clustering strategies because that could go by itself. WildFly also comes with a command line interface tool called as JBoss CLI. It's in the bin directory, and using that JBoss CLI, you can connect to a standalone instance or a domain controller. It basically provides you an interactive Unix style shell, and the entire management tree of WildFly is exposed to you over there. So you can literally traverse through the entire management tree very easily using this interactive Unix shell. All the commands are very contextual. So you say, I'm in the messaging subsystem, I'm in the clustering subsystem, I'm in the web subsystem, I'm in the EJB subsystem, I'm in the resources or a deployment subsystem, and then you issue the commands accordingly. And then, of course, the intuitive resource tab completion is all there as well. So you can run it in interactive mode, which is where you are running in the shell, or you can run it in non-interactive mode, where you can, after you have identified what your commands are, you put the commands in a file, and you say, go run this file. And that's what we see a lot of IT people using specifically for their DevOps strategy. We can also create, most of the commands in JBoss CLI are single action command, but you can easily create compound operations as well by leveraging multiple of those single operations and creating compound commands from them. Whatever way you make a change, whether you make a change using web-based admin console or using JBoss CLI, those changes are eventually persisted in the underlying data store, which is my domain.xml or standalone.xml configuration file. We have a web-based admin console, so well, okay, I don't have a WildFly instance running here locally. It's very simple, very fast. Like, you know what? Hold on, let me run a WildFly instance locally here as well. So if I run a WildFly instance here locally, oh, seems like something is running. Okay, that's fine. Over now. If I go, so here is my simple web-based admin console. You can deploy an application, create a data source, apply a patch, assign user roles, look at your runtime deployments. How does your deployments look like? You can add and create a deployments here. You can do patch management here. You can look at the configuration information and edit and change it, all of it. It's a very fancy web-based user interface that works very well. Now there are some issues in terms of usability, and we're trying to work towards that to simplify all of that. But it's still very lightweight and responsive. You don't need to worry about XML configuration effectively. You can manage your single instance or domains from here very easily. Mostly provide basic monitoring information, but there are other tools like Red Hat JBoss Operations Network, which provide a lot more comprehensive monitoring and management facility. Now, if any of you are using Glassfish, then you need to be aware that Oracle has killed the commercial support for Glassfish. That means Glassfish is no longer a commercial product. Now it's purely community-driven product. It's just a pure reference implementation that is only for reference. So there was a report that was done by Zero Turnaround that talks about why you should migrate from Glassfish to JBoss or Tommy. And then there's an article on wildfly.org that talks about Glassfish to WildFly migration. So we have resources that are going to help you out. The report also said the most logical decision when migrating from Glassfish is opting for an equivalent open source alternative, not to WebLogic, Oracle would like to. So important point to understand. And JBoss WildFly are chosen because a vibrant developer community, documentation on the web, sponsorship and support by market leaders. And Tommy is a very compelling alternative as well, which is run by David Blevins. It's basically Tomcat with Java EE support. Okay, so quick summary: WildFly is Java EE 7 compliant, very lightweight. You saw how rapidly it starts in terms of the disk memory footprint and disk footprint and processing speed. Multiple ways it can be managed. We just saw JBoss CLI and Web Console, but there is REST APIs, there are Java APIs, there are Perl APIs, different ways by which you can manage. Highly scalable. We saw the numbers on Undertow, and then we know customers who are running hundreds of WildFly instances in their data centers very successfully, or JBoss EAP instances. Fully open source and a full-blown application server now available. So wildfly.org is your primary source. The source code is github.com/wildfly. If you want to tweet, ping us, use the Twitter handle. The commercial product is JBoss EAP 6.2. And if you're interested in learning about Java EE 7, then I will take you to this wiki here. Java EE 7 samples, and there are about 200 plus Java EE 7 samples contributed by 36 contributors here. So if you want to learn about, for example, WebSocket, you click on WebSocket here, and then there are about 30 plus samples just on WebSocket. You want to learn about, I don't know, say JMS, so a few samples on JMS. You want to learn about jaxrs, so there are about 30 samples on jaxrs as well. So a lot of samples / Archillian tests that allows you to run these tests against Glassfish and WildFly. And of course, you can find me at Arun Gupta. You can ping me anytime. I'm always happy to help you out. Let me unshare the screen here and go back to the room. All right, how are we doing?
Okay, I think it was really interesting, your presentation. So there are many guys here. I don't know if any of you has any questions about the presentation that Arun has made. So that's the time. Yeah, you have one.
Hi, Arun.
Hello.
Yeah, what about hot swapping the code into the running JBoss server? How is it works with JRebel or not? Like, is
it does work. It does work with JRebel, and I've seen. I don't know exactly any customers per se, but I know several people in the community who are using JRebel with WildFly. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago there was a new release of JRebel that works with the latest WildFly as well, and of course JBoss EAP.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And this CLI command line interface, does it work with when the server is deployed on OpenShift? You showed the CLI interface management.
Yes. No, it does. It does, because see, the thing is that on OpenShift, again you have to poke firewalls. You have to poke holes in the firewall, because by default you cannot just expose any port that you want. So the blog that I showed, it talks about exactly how you can poke holes in the firewall or expose those two particular ports. But once those ports are published, then JBoss CLI can connect to a local host or to a host running somewhere on a remote server, and then that way it can communicate with it. Yes.
Yeah, but can I SSH just to, like you showed, SSH to a server and make all via CLI? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
thanks.
I mean, what's running in OpenShift is a full WildFly instance, and there is JBoss CLI in that WildFly instance, so you can SSH in there and play with SS. So let's take a look at it. You know, we were right there. So if I share my screen again, there you go. This is my SSH command. I go here. So this is my WildFly. Okay. So if I go to say standalone, there is no bin direct. Oh no, not here. You go to tools. Nothing in tools. Oh, there is bin right here. So here you go. So this is my jboss cli.sh in that SSH directory, and that way you can communicate with it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody has a question? No? Nobody? Everybody's using, I think there's some of these guys has using a lot of time, I don't know if Glassfish or another kind of server application. Can you, for example, stand up and hand your hand if you're using Glassfish, for example? Many of you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 guys. And the other guys, are you using, guys, for example, WebLogic? How many of you? Nobody? 1, 2. And the other, what are you using? Tomcat, maybe? Tomcat? Okay, I think it's the winner. JBoss. Okay, JBoss as well. And what about the other guys? There are many guys that.
Anybody using WebSphere?
Okay. WebSphere, exactly. WebSphere. 3 guys. Okay. Cool.
Oh, I feel for you, man.
JBoss. Okay. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions. That's the time for it. If you don't have any questions, I think it's enough for all of us.
No, this is great. Actually, if you can all look at the camera, then I would like to take a picture of the Hangout.
Go ahead.
So good smile, maybe wave, whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah.
And I am 3, 2, and 1. And let me try once again, because sometimes the picture goes crazy. So let's try it again. 3, 2, and 1. If you don't mind, I'll quickly look at the picture. How did the picture look? Hopefully we won't have to take it again, and we will be good. Yeah, we're looking really good. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Barcelona Jug. I am really happy that I could finally give this presentation, and hopefully I will see you someday in person.
Okay, why not? Come to Barcelona, enjoy the beach and our beautiful sun.
Absolutely. All right, take care. Have a good day, guys.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.